Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying. It is my real pleasure in a few minutes to bring to the stage Diane Yentel, President and CEO of National Council of Nonprofits. But let me tell you a little story about how easy Diane has made my job. And I think the job of all the CEOs across our network. Nonprofit New York is a member organization of National Council of Nonprofits. Diane took her role in January 2025 and immediately filed a lawsuit against the federal government. And for the past 11 months, Diane and the National Council on Nonprofit, the team there, has been what I consider our first line of defense for the sector. She has been a fierce fundraiser as well, and transferring that wealth to the member organizations. A woman who lives equity, and her team, who really understands how to build an inclusive network. Because of the type of work Diane does and the leadership she demonstrates, we at Nonprofit New York can focus on being to the nonprofit sector in New York City what Diane is for us at the national level. And think about this. Unfortunately, I've resorted to battle analogies in this period. Diane is our first line of defense. The National Council gives me time and us time to shore up our defenses locally. Should there be vulnerability at the national level, we are standing prepared to run interference. Because we're in a battle for existence as a sector. We're in battle for what we do well and the discipline and commitment that we have to those who need us most. And at any point in time, everybody can find themselves relying on a nonprofit organization, from arts and culture to older people to youth, and you name it. I don't have to preach that. So I have been grateful for Diane's fierce, compassionate leadership, and it is my honor to bring her to the stage. Diane Yentel.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for that introduction and for your incredible leadership here in New York. I think you all probably know very well, but you are very fortunate to have Jackie as the leader, working with all of you and with us in Washington, D.C. to protect and advance nonprofits. So hello, it is so good to be here with you all today. I am Diane from the National Council of Nonprofits, and at NCN, we work to champion, inform, and connect nonprofit organizations to protect and advance the sector, to allow you all to continue to do the vital work that you do in communities across the country. And our closest, our most essential partners in the work are our state and regional associations of nonprofits. So we have 55 state and regional associations of nonprofits as members of NCN, Nonprofit New York being one. And together we have a combined membership of about 33,000 nonprofit organizations, making us the largest network of nonprofits in North America. And our membership really keeps us grounded in the reality of how the current moment is impacting nonprofits here in New York and across the country, and grounded in a deep understanding of how essential nonprofits are to all of our lives and to the lives of all Americans. And for them, for our members, for all of you, for the entire nonprofit sector, this year has been one of tremendous consequence. In the last 10 months, nonprofit organizations have faced challenges and threats unlike any before. Challenges and threats of a kind that if we weren't living through them, we wouldn't believe them. So far this year, we've seen executive orders to strip essential funding from nonprofits and to gut the essential programs that funding supports. We've seen a vilification of nonprofits, especially those working with the most marginalized, the most vulnerable people in our country. We've seen hundreds of nonprofit organizations targeted with investigations and threatened with baseless criminal charges. We've seen coordinated campaigns to smear nonprofits through the media, congressional hearings, and continual harassment of nonprofit leaders and organizations. We've seen attempts to dismantle long-standing protections against partisan influence in the work of nonprofits. Over the last month, we've seen an escalation of harmful rhetoric, with some in the administration and Congress going as far as to use words like domestic terrorism and nonprofits in the same sentence, with some going as far as going to the floor of the US House of Representatives to say that nonprofits are an enemy to be fought in, quote, a war to protect Western civilization. Most recently, we've seen the administration use hunger, the threat of lawlessly ending food assistance, as a tool for political leverage, regardless of the pain for people and the burden for nonprofits. It's all hard to fathom, right? Knowing nonprofits in the way that we all do, it's hard to understand. But it's important that we recognize that these challenges and these threats to nonprofit aren't random or separate. They are part of a coordinated strategy to erode public trust in nonprofits, to overwhelm defenses, and to sap our courage, to create fear. And why? All of this because of the singular role that nonprofits play in our communities as independent voices and advocates. Our independence can be a threat to those looking to control and manage a narrative that suits a political agenda. I've been working with nonprofit organizations for nearly 30 years, and I've never seen a moment where the threats to the sector were so immediate, so widespread, and so potentially devastating. So as we look to the damage already done so far this year, 23,000 nonprofit jobs eliminated, $500 billion in federal funding cut, countless community needs going unmet. And as we look to what clearly lies ahead, more congressional hearings, investigations, attempts to strip nonprofit status. As we look ahead, we have a choice to make. As organizations, as a sector, we're at a crossroads. We have two possible paths before us. On one path, one of inaction and silence, we are weakened. Our hard-earned trust eroded, our financial stability shaken, and our ability to serve put at risk. And that outcome wouldn't just be a loss for us as nonprofit organizations. It will be a loss for every American who relies on nonprofits for childcare, healthcare, food, counseling, crisis support, disaster relief, and so much more. That outcome is literally unacceptable. But on the other path, the one that we must take, we can emerge stronger, our impact deeper. Stronger because we act in new ways. Stronger because we stand up and speak out, because we rally our communities and advocate for our work. Stronger because we use this moment to unite across the sector and across the country. And stronger because we tell our stories to remind America of the indispensable value that nonprofits bring every single day. It's often said that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. And I believe we will emerge from this moment tempered, resilient, and stronger than before. But doing so requires something essential from each of us: a willingness to act together with courage. And fortunately, courage is something that nonprofits know well. It's who you are. Despite the challenges, the misinformation, the chaos of this last year, nonprofits continue to serve, to heal, and to lift up communities when no one else can or will. You act with courage every day, offering hope, help, and belonging. Over these last 10 months, since I first started at NCN, I've met with and I've heard from literally thousands of nonprofit workers across the country. I've listened to your stories, I've witnessed your impact, I've seen lives transformed by your work. Your work is essential. It's too important to be disrupted or dismantled by political forces bent on control. So this is the moment for us to take that path, to act courageously, to stand together, to show that no matter the challenge, no matter how difficult, nonprofits get it done. And I'll give you an example. At NCN, just 1 week after inauguration, we sued the administration. And that was also, by the way, just 2 weeks after I'd started at NCN. And ours was only the second lawsuit filed against the administration. And we filed it to stop the reckless and truly radical attempt by the administration to halt all federal funding overnight. Imagine for a moment what that action would have meant for your work, for our communities, for our country. Imagine all federal funding stopped overnight. Funding for homeless shelters and food assistance, funding for early education and healthcare, for suicide hotlines and crisis counseling, all stopped. That directive from OMB for a complete government funding shutdown came through at around 8 o'clock on a Monday night to go into effect less than 24 hours later, and I will never forget it. I'll never forget getting that text that night and sitting bolt upright on my couch and in my living room at home. And I'll never forget the absolute clarity I felt in that moment. The certainty that a broad funding freeze would be disastrous for nonprofit organizations and the communities that we serve, and that NCN must act. And I'll never forget how quickly The NCN Board of Directors said yes. No hesitation, no debates. Remember, I was 2 weeks on the job. And in NCN's 35-year history, we've never filed a lawsuit before, much less as the lead plaintiff against a sitting administration. But we knew that the moment called for bold action and that we had to act on behalf of the sector. So we worked all night and into the morning, and by noon the next day, our attorneys were filing in court in the case of NCN versus the White House. And we won. Our lawsuit kept and keeps funding flowing to the front line so you can continue to do your critical work. We've since filed 3 more lawsuits against the administration's lawless actions to harm nonprofits, and we're winning them too. And these wins are about more than federal funding. They're a reminder for all of us that in this moment, our collective courage and action isn't only about standing up for the nonprofit sector, it's about standing up for the rule of law and for democracy itself. And it's a reminder of the power of staying united, because we are stronger together. Too often, nonprofits are forced to compete, right? For funding, visibility, influence, so we can get more funding to do our work. And that competition divides us. Our opponents know this, and they try to play us against each other. They are carefully selecting issue areas to target first, issue areas that have less public support, that might be harder for some to defend. They're tempting us to denounce each other. They're tempting us to draw lines between different types of nonprofit organizations in order to weaken us all. It's a trap, and we can't fall into it. If there is protection to be had for our sector, and I believe that there is, we will find it through visibility and solidarity, by being vocal about the threats and being united in our defense of the sector. This moment really demands of all of us unity, coordination, and shared risk. That's why we joined with other nonprofit organizations in all of the lawsuits that we filed. It's why we're working with new partners across the sector and across the country to build new partnerships and collaborations in our work. And it's why in that moment in January, when silence would have been safer, NCN and our partners across the country spoke up and acted boldly. And after we filed that first lawsuit, I heard from hundreds, probably thousands of people, nonprofit workers across the country, and so many of their stories stay with me, and one in particular. I heard from a woman who runs a tiny nonprofit in a very rural community. She runs a rape crisis center, the only such center in her community, a team of 2. They would have had to shut their doors if the funding freeze had gone forward. And she told me that our lawsuit made her feel like someone was fighting for her. It made her feel less alone, and it gave her the strength to keep going. And this is what happens when any of us stand up and speak out. Because the thing about courage is it spreads. Every drop of courage creates hope. It ripples outward, inspiring others to take action too, big or small, that collectively creates change. You don't know who needs to hear your voice right now or who needs to see your bold leadership, but I guarantee you someone does, and that your courage will bolster theirs. Now, I know that not every nonprofit organization, not every nonprofit worker can or should file a lawsuit. And not everyone can speak out about funding cuts or other threats to the sector, or about all that is not normal in this moment. Smaller nonprofits, those that receive federal funding, those working on the front lines on issue areas currently being targeted, I get it. I understand that you have the most to lose. You have the most to fear. But simply telling the story of your good work and its importance in our community can make a profound difference. And we all can and must tell those stories. Nonprofits tend to work quietly, right? Heads down, avoiding the spotlight, getting it done. But while we've been serving, others have been spinning narratives to define us, unfairly, inaccurately, and often with malice. When we don't tell our stories, others will, and they won't always tell them with truth or with care. So we counter false narratives with truth. And the nonprofit sector has an incredibly inspiring story to tell. So let's tell it together. Nonprofits are Americans coming together to solve our communities and our country's biggest problems. People who are uncomfortable sitting on the sidelines or waiting for others to lead. Nonprofit stories are ones of hope in action. So at NCN, one of the most powerful things that we can do is help you tell the story of your work in your communities. Because while we all know that nonprofits are America's backbone, more people need to be reminded. That's why we launched our Nonprofits Get It Done campaign. This campaign is about showing policymakers, reminding policymakers of the vital work that nonprofits do in every community in our country. It's about countering misinformation and political attacks. And it's about moving us all from this necessarily defensive posture that we've been in to a proactive, offensive, positive message about the indispensable role of nonprofits. We launched this campaign a couple months ago, and part of it has been to place paid media ads, a very limited media buy, in 10 states and Washington, D.C. And with that limited buy, in the last just couple months alone, we've achieved over 50 million impressions and a very high interaction rate, which tells us that this campaign is breaking through the noise in an exciting way, and that we have an opportunity to really lean in and use this campaign to shift the narrative back to one where most people in America support nonprofits. The campaign also has a grassroots component, and that's where all of you come in. You can go to nonprofitsgetitdone.org, and you can use the campaign to tell the story of your nonprofit. Starting on Giving Tuesday, we're planning for monthly days of action that you can participate in, and I hope you will. We built this campaign for you to adapt, to spotlight your work in your voice with your community. So please use it. Act with courage, share it widely, because when we speak with one voice, we don't just defend ourselves, we define ourselves. And then this is how we win, how we not just survive this moment, but how we're strengthened by it, by acting courageously, by standing together and by proclaiming loudly and proudly the essential work that we do. And as we do, know that in this moment of deep divisions and historic challenges, your work here in New York, like your peers throughout the country, has impact of still more profound importance. Your work is about preserving democracy itself. Strong democracies depend on vibrant communities and social networks. Without those connections, people become more isolated, institution weakens, and polarization grows. Nonprofits provide food, shelter, dignity, safety, yes. And just as importantly, you provide connection. Nonprofits show up every day solving real problems with care and consistency, and when you do, you rebuild trust in community, in each other. You remind Americans what it looks like when institutions serve people. Every time you deliver a service or meet a community need, you reinforce something bigger, that Americans can still count on each other. So your essential work doesn't just repair holes in the social safety net. You strengthen the threads that hold democracy together. So now more than ever, I want to thank you for your good work, for keeping at it despite it all, for showing up, for speaking out, for serving our communities. Keep going. Lead boldly. Act courageously. Tell your story of hope and impact. And as you do, know that NCN has your back always, and that together, fueled by courage, acting in solidarity, speaking out, and leading boldly, we will ensure that nonprofits remain the backbone that keeps our communities, our country, and our democracy strong. And together, we'll continue to prove that nonprofits get it done. Thank you.